The longest and most detailed game in the series, We Were Here Forever, has by far the best overall set of puzzles compared to the other games in the series. And although we aren't going to be comparing games side to side in this video, nor puzzles from one game to another, we are going to look at the best puzzles in We Were Here Forever. To do this fairly, we are going to look at each puzzle independently from one another, comparing aesthetics, gameplay, frustration and satisfaction level, replayability, and intuitiveness, while ignoring things like, it's a long puzzle right after another long puzzle, so it loses points. Also, I won't be ranking puzzles in the same tier against each other, just dropping them in chronological order into the tier. Kicking off, we have the Dungeon Prison. Great aesthetics, it is simple, straightforward, makes you do a little bit of looking around for pieces, easy to communicate effectively with your partner, and even has a throwback to the game's first puzzle completed sound. It is short, concise, and a great introduction to the game and its setting, the perfect average for us to set our baseline. C tier. Next up, we have our first main puzzle, the Cavern. This is a banger puzzle. The dark aesthetics lit by the lanterns, to the uniting with your friend, looking for clues to solve a series of small puzzles that completes the overall large puzzle room. Now this isn't perfect, there are a few things that can be difficult to find and figure out, namely the arrows in the quilt and the book often trip people up the first go around. Empowering the coil can be frustrating, but the worst part of this puzzle is actually carrying around the giant gear. Overall, good puzzle. A tier. The third puzzle is the first fully split one, where the players are locked away from one another and have to rely fully on descriptions of what they can see and interact with. The puzzle becomes straightforward once the player in the office finds the books, making it strictly about communication on how things on your partner's screen are being affected by your actions. Now the player in the vault is unable to do more than press a button in phase 2, which is going to drop the rating down. And it can only really be replayed once when the player positions are swapped. Nothing too noteworthy here, but nothing to hold against it. B tier. The King's Arena is the most throwback puzzle to the first two games in the series, and the atmosphere is really cool, but it doesn't seem to quite fit in with the escape the dungeon feel. It has always felt like an out-of-place puzzle, and the gameplay can feel long, boring, and repetitive despite each new chamber being slightly different. And if you fail, the reduced walking speed to try again is extremely punishing. As each chamber is different, failure at least once is likely, which doesn't seem fair to the player. A game shouldn't rely on you losing to teach you, it should give you chances to be incorrect and learn from that. The guide and follower dynamic is the saving factor from it being the worst ranking. Building trust and succeeding does add to its satisfaction level when completed. C tier. The first major puzzle in the Jester's Box involves numbers with portals. It can feel very reminiscent of the elevator puzzle and the following ice cave puzzle from We Were Here Together, where you seem to be going in a lot of circles. These types of puzzles can feel extremely frustrating, but this is really good level design because it forces you to work your way backwards. Think of what the solution wants and then work in reverse to find out how to get there. Being unable to see where you are on your own platforms and relying on your teammate to tell you where, and also where to go, further deepens this level's design. You are almost never static, there's sweet aesthetics, and the satisfaction when you hit the aha moment and streamline to the end is golden. Easy S tier. In the second puzzle, what I like to call the number area, the gameplay is very clever. It involves back and forth discoveries between the two players with realizations like, I need to move this, so you can move that, so that I can get here. It's a straightforward puzzle that just involves constant communication, with satisfaction of success when each new room is created. The second half of the symbol rooms involves a light and a dark cube, where players can see all the symbols, including ones on their own tile, and through experimentation, discover that turning one room in on the light side also moves the corresponding room in the dark side. Honestly, I have nothing bad to say about this puzzle, except perhaps all the camera shake and motion sickness from constantly looking upward. A tier. Before we can enter the chapel, we must of course solve a puzzle. This one involves a researcher and a visualizer. The visualizer must describe what they see while the team works together to come up with ideas of who is being described. The researcher then reads about and looks for the right person as the visualizer is describing them. It is a back and forth dynamic of confirming each other's theories. Being the person who stands outside, you get a sense of how cold and bitter the landscape of the kingdom is, creating more world immersion. The player reading the books gets to see more about the history of the kingdom. Excellent lore building, but it's rather a forgettable puzzle once you move on from it. Short, simple, and sweet. B tier. Once inside the chapel, we learn more about the lore of the kingdom. It is introduced in a mind-bending way. Now I love this puzzle. It's pure logic, but you have to explore and figure out clues. From using the broken case to describing apparel and hair, and using trial and error, this one nails the satisfaction. It can technically be solved by one person once the doors are opened to retrieving the mannequins, but being able to discuss thoughts is super helpful, especially when you find a new clue. And seeing your friend realize just how to solve the puzzle can also be super rewarding. A tier. Up next is the organ, and this one could have been a disaster. It's only saved by the organist being able to see half the notes. Otherwise, it's a single person staring at a wall solving a logic puzzle. Now it isn't super tricky, but it can take a little bit if things aren't clicking mentally. The organist, in the meantime, doesn't have anything to do and will eventually just be the test subject for the logician. And it doesn't really have a salvaging quality by replay value and switching places. It's just kind of boring. C tier. For the first of the 3 astrolabe locations, we have Rockbury. The majority of this chapter is exploration, with a brief puzzle or two that are too small to be counted as their own. Unfortunately, the animation on the ski lift was removed instead of just being made into an optional cutscene. But nevertheless, the visuals and atmosphere are incredible. It feels like an abandoned hideaway meant only for the right person to find. You spend the entire time wandering forward and just get to relax and enjoy the architecture and visuals. Experience-wise, this would be an S tier, but without noteworthy puzzles to solve and this being a puzzle game, there's just so much that's forgettable. B tier. The light reflection puzzle is neat as it requires both people taking the lead for half the puzzle. The lower person guides the upper one to getting the right angles for the reflections, and the upper person verifies and gets the lower person to replace the glass in the right spots. Now this puzzle can be tough, but it isn't too frustrating as you always feel close to solving it. It's understandable, the goal is clear from the start, there's lots of trial and error that's not punishing, and that's a good factor. This could be a miserable puzzle, but the execution for it was done very, very well. A tier. The graveyard tablets are very much a one-person job. It's just a logic puzzle that's very hard to mess up. It almost feels like they needed a filler puzzle for this area, so they threw it in. The symbols it uses are referenced throughout the game, but it's just a very forgettable puzzle that you can solve accidentally. It often comes as a surprise when you solve it. D tier. In the graveyard, the players are split from each other once again, but the well allows for keys to be passed from one person to the other, a cool mechanic. The puzzle falls back to the researcher and explorer roles, which is always enjoyable. The graveyard itself feels desolate, forgotten, and empty. This puzzle can get frustrating if the explorer doesn't properly find each gravestone, and for the player underground it can be very confusing trying to find the right tunnel with the correct family tree. But my biggest complaint is the screen effects that the player above ground has to deal with if they guess the wrong grave, as they are a cause of frustration and motion sickness. Still, it is a fully replayable puzzle from the opposite perspective, and adds to the sense of long-standing lore this castle has suffered through. B tier. Another forgotten portion of the graveyard chapter is the tomb digging section. While it is cool to have the above and below ground graves to search through, this part is sort of a letdown. It is stupidly hard for the person above ground to understand where the person below is trying to describe from the map they receive. Both my teammate and myself eventually gave up and ran around hacking at piles on the ground until we found the right spot. The map should instead lead to unopened graves, and it should last more than just tombs underground. This puzzle is honestly more of a letdown and frustration corner than anything. D tier. My favorite chapter, the Nautilus, starts off on the wrong foot for most people. The maze is really cool and adds a timer to the puzzle. Exploring while the partner tries to supply oxygen in the right spots at the right time is a sweet idea, but I feel like the plumber's position was executed a little poorly. The maps on the wall are extremely incoherent, and it took me until my 3rd playthrough to realize that they are actually in order of how the maze explorer is witnessing things. They are very incomplete and don't display clearly the locations of oxygen that can be opened. Pipes themselves are a very cool logic puzzle, but at some point, without being able to understand the maps, you just start flipping pipes until something works. For the person below the surface, it is a fun journey being able to look around and have adjusted sensory inputs, but extremely frustrating when your teammate can't figure out how to give you oxygen or find where you are in the maze. The 3rd floor, the final one, being unable to resupply with air is genius, as the doors are instead opened with the pipes. The puzzle is replayable, but it is more frustrating than it is satisfying, and the statue creatures act more as a red herring than a locator for the plumber. It is only a few small changes from being an S tier in its current state, so C tier. The dual pipe segment is another short bit, and a throwback to the pipes and We Were Here Together on a smaller scale. I do like this puzzle a lot. It is quick and easy, involves some logic, and you must listen to your partner to go anywhere. I'm not entirely sure what the pipes do to provide power to the Nautilus, and it does seem a bit out of the blue type of a puzzle, but there isn't much to complain about. It's alright. B tier. Once underwater, one person goes to communicate with the sea monster while the other person must stay back and interpret what's being said. Now this puzzle can be extremely frustrating for most people, as describing the sounds almost seems like describing the taste of salt. Much of this puzzle is context clues, as if you can get a few bits of the clue, you can normally reason out the rest. I do like the atmosphere of this puzzle, and it adds to the feeling of doing everything you can to hide from the king when making the astrolabe. But the lack of movement and vision can be very annoying, and then when a teammate can't seem to tell the difference between and doesn't help much either. B tier. The final puzzle in the Nautilus chapter is the colored chemicals section, and it's an absolute banger. The long cutscene in between each time you have to reset can be a bit redundant, but the timer is back and that brings the adrenaline. trying to balance your own needs with that of your friend, realizing you can do things simultaneously, running out of bowls, passing things back and forth. Yeah, this puzzle slaps. There's always something you can be doing, and when you go again, you try to do better and optimize things even further. It is replayable from both sides and has a great atmosphere, beautiful aesthetics, with bright colors of the ocean. Working together and being patient, trying new things, you feel good each time a color vial fills, and the overall satisfaction for completing this puzzle is unmatched. S tier. Our last stand against the king, we enter the final puzzle. Despite not having a timer, the music and thunder add intensity and urgency. This puzzle has some weird movement with jumping and ladders, but otherwise it's a fun series of mini tasks to power the astrolabe. It nails the work quickly, we are almost there vibe, and each puzzle requires both players to do equal work. It isn't an ultimate boss, but it does fulfill the we worked together and we will now show off how far we have come as a team. Something else it does well is by this point, you've learned when a portion of a puzzle is complete and how to look for the next part of it. After lighting one bulb, you look for the next automatically. All around, it's a well executed last puzzle that caps off what you've been working for with the other puzzles by getting to power the astrolabe and use your improved communication skills. A tier. Despite not being a puzzle, the final decision the players must make is who to choose to stay on the raft. Now I see the vision with this, but it could have been executed so much better. Perhaps an Easter egg ending where telling the sea monster during that puzzle a code and he shows up to take you both to safety would have been cool, but as a decision of who to drown and who to float away, it just fails. I still haven't figured out how the game decides who drowns and when. It takes minutes to let someone fall into the water before they go. The decision of who lives and who dies isn't nearly as clear as it is in We Were Here Together, where somebody had a dagger. A way to solve this ending is whoever fell through the floor in the previous puzzle spawns next to the raft, and when the teammate swims over, the player on the raft then has an option to hand over the raft and jump overboard, or push the friend away. As it currently is, this ending just isn't super great. C tier. And that's it. I hope I was clear, unbiased, and had good reasoning for each puzzle, covering each of the required topics to justify all my decisions. Do you agree with my votes? I've left a link to the tier list below if you'd like to make your own.